Good evening and welcome to Poland Daily. My name is Natalia Moczulska and this is the news. The 51st day of the Russian invasion of Ukraine has passed. The authorities of the besieged Mariupol informed that Russian soldiers were digging up the bodies of killed civilians. Occupation forces are trying to cover up the traces of war crimes. The Russians also shell almost all towns and villages on the front line in the Donetsk region. On Thursday evening, anti-aircraft alarms were announced in all districts in Ukraine. Explosions were heard in Kiev, Kharkiv, and Ivano-Frankivsk. During the 50 days of full-scale invasion of the Russian Federation, they showed that Donbass is the main target for Russia. It is Donbass that Russia wants to destroy in the first place. They force their inhabitants into their army. They throw them into the worst fights, straight to the front lines where we defend ourselves against Russian attacks. The cities and villages of Donbass are being destroyed. The proud Kharkiv has not seen such aggression in 80 years. Why destroy it? What can be achieved by burning Kharkiv? These are not rhetorical questions. These are questions about how thoughtless this invasion is, how suicidal it is for all that Russia is allegedly defending, for Russian culture, for ties with this nation, for the Russian language. Russia is destroying all this with its weapons, for decades at least, for generations. Yesterday, the cruiser Moscow sank in the Black Sea, which forced the Ukrainian defenders of the Serpent Island to surrender. Ukrainian forces reported that it was hit by 2 Neptune missiles. Of the 510 people who were on the sunken cruiser, only 58 were saved. This is the flagship of the Black Sea Fleet. This is the first flagship of Russia to be sunk since the Russian-Japanese War. So we are witnessing an event that on average takes place once every 100 years. Meanwhile, in Mariupol, the Russian occupiers prohibited the burying of the people they had killed. To this end, they placed guards in each yard. Ukrainian intelligence recorded the presence of 13 mobile crematoriums in the city. The Russians' goal is to remove traces of war crimes in the city. The situation is the worst there. We have data from a few days ago provided by Russian separatists that 80% of Mariupol is controlled by the Russians. The last defensive stronghold of the defenders of Mariupol is the Azovstal iron and steel plant, one of the largest metallurgical plants in Europe. They defended themselves, these Ukrainian forces, in 3 such isolated areas, that is, on the premises of the Azovstal plant, in the port of Mariupol, as well as in the north of the city, which is mainly on the premises of the metallurgical plant. In the last hours, the Ukrainians have managed to connect, that is, the soldiers of the 36th Marine Brigade from that northern part of Mariupol, from the region they were in, got to the Azovstal plant. Yesterday, over 2,500 people were evacuated through humanitarian corridors from Ukrainian cities. For the time being, there are no indications of an imminent return to peace talks. President Volodymyr Zelensky emphasized that the atrocities committed by the Russian troops in Mariupol and in the suburbs of Kiev and Bucha and Borodyanka further limited the possibility of negotiating with the Russians. In turn, Vladimir Putin said that the talks had stalled. Almost 2,800,000 refugees from Ukraine have already arrived in Poland. They can count on help from the government and ordinary people. From the first days of the war, Poland has also been actively involved in diplomatic, humanitarian, and military aid for the neighbor fighting against Russia. At the border of Koroszczyn, an approximately 20-kilometer-long queue of trucks was built at the border crossing with Belarus. The reason is detailed checks of the transported goods due to economic sanctions of the European Union and the ban on transporting certain goods to Russia. The nuisance at the border is, will, and can be even greater. We speak about it very clearly, and drivers must take it into account. Today, there is a war in Ukraine, and the highest imperative and the highest good is to help our neighbors defend their freedom. Since the beginning of the Russian aggression against Ukraine, Poland has been actively supporting and organizing aid for refugees. Both private individuals and non-governmental organizations organize support, including by hosting Ukrainians under their roof. Help also flows at the government level. By Wednesday, 846,000 PESEL numbers had been issued in Poland. 96% of them were awarded to women and children. 425,000 are adults. 136,000 are children aged 12 to 18, and 284,000 are children up to 12 years of age.
A 284,000
A few days ago, an amendment to the law on assistance to Ukrainian citizens in connection with an armed conflict in the territory of that country was adopted. Thanks to these changes, Ukrainian citizens can stay legally in Poland for 18 months, have access to the labor market, the possibility of setting up a business, taking advantage of health care, and receiving social assistance. Poland also supports Ukraine in their homeland. The head of the Ministry of Defense emphasized the importance of serving in the Polish army in the context of the current situation. Ukraine has been invaded by Russia. War crimes are committed in Ukraine. Our task is to ensure the safety of all of us, and you soldiers of the Polish armed forces perform these tasks perfectly. Since the beginning of the Russian war in Ukraine, 2,760,000 refugees have entered Poland. We must remember that those people who previously entered Poland at the very beginning, they were in a much better mental state, in a much better condition than those who now come with their experiences. The border guard emphasizes that the situation is stable at all 8 border crossings with Ukraine. Today, the Catholic Church commemorates the martyrdom of Christ on the cross. It is the only day of the year when Holy Mass is not celebrated. Instead, the Liturgy of the Lord's Passion is celebrated. This year, the faithful will pray for the Ukrainian nation. During yesterday's liturgy of Holy Thursday, Pope Francis washed the feet of prisoners. I would like this to reach our hearts today, including mine. God forgives everything and always forgives. Now I will try to do what Jesus did, wash feet. I do it from the heart because we priests should be the first to serve others and not to exploit others. Clericalism sometimes leads us down this path, but we must serve. It is also a sign of love for these brothers and sisters, for all of you present. It's a sign that says, I don't judge anyone. I try to serve everyone. The one who judges us is a rather unusual judge, the Lord who judges and forgives. Let us continue this ceremony with the desire to serve and forgive one another.
Servire. Questo vorrei metterlo oggi nel cuore di tutti noi, anche da me.
The second day of the Easter Triduum is a memory of the martyr's death of Jesus. Good Friday is special. It differs from the rest of the liturgical year in that there is no Holy Mass today. During the liturgy, the Lord's Passion is read, and the homily is followed by the solemn adoration of the cross. On Good Friday, we confess the truth about the cross, about which Christ will say, "Whoever wants to be my disciple must take up the cross." One of the typical Polish Good Friday traditions is building Lord's graves. At the end of the liturgy, the priests in procession take Jesus to him. Today, the traditional way of the cross in the Colosseum will take place. During the 13th station, the cross is to be carried by the Ukrainian and Russian families. The Good Friday liturgy brings sadness to our hearts, but tomorrow night we will rejoice in the resurrection. More than 150 people were injured in the morning riots on Jerusalem's Temple Mount. The clash between Israeli officials and Palestinians took place on the grounds of the Al-Aqsa Mosque. The protests coincided with the beginning of the Jewish Passover festival and the month of Ramadan in April, which is a holy holiday observed by the Muslims worldwide. According to reports from the Palestinian side, Israeli police officers were to enter the mosque just before dawn. At that time, there were several thousand believers. Officers were to attack one of the Muslim guards. These words were denied by the Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs. As reported on Twitter, the purpose of the intervention was to disperse the crowd and remove stones to prevent further violence. In addition, it was assured that the police did not enter the mosque during the clashes. Israeli security forces have been on high alert since the beginning of April, all because of the Easter, Ramadan, and Passover holidays that coincide this year. Located on the Temple Hill in Jerusalem, the Al-Aqsa Mosque is a holy place for both Muslims and Jews. Traditional Good Friday processions passed through the streets of Spanish cities. The most famous ones took place in Seville, in the south of the country, where hooded penitents carried richly decorated figures of Jesus and Mary. Every year, processions attract hundreds of thousands of people from Spain and around the world. La Madruga, or dawn, is the time of the most spectacular processions. At midnight from Thursday to Friday, a procession of penitents, dressed in long coats and pointed hoods covering their faces, sets off. They are called Nazarenos and belong to brotherhoods, the oldest of which are up to 800 years old. Penitents are carrying platforms with figures of Jesus and Mary. In Seville, it is Jesus del Gran Poder, or Jesus of Great Power, and Virgen de la Esperanza de Macarena, or the Virgin of Hope from Macarena, the patron saint of the city. The ornate platforms can weigh up to 2 tons. The procession is accompanied by candles, the scent of incense, music, and characteristic penitential songs. They rightly bring to mind the singing of muezzin, because in the south of Spain, for centuries, Christian and Muslim cultures have mixed. The processions can last up to 14 hours. During the Holy Week in Seville, as many as 70 are held, but the best known are those on Good Friday. Since 2020, they have been canceled due to the coronavirus pandemic. The people of Seville do not hide their satisfaction with the return of the procession. We couldn't wait. We waited for the pandemic to end so that we could come here. There is nothing more beautiful than the La Macarena procession. I was really looking forward to it. 2 years of suffering have passed. 2 years without my Virgin Macarena. There are tons of people. They all leave their houses like crazy because we had a very bad time. We want to go on and enjoy. Similar processions are held throughout the country. However, Seville, located in Andalusia, is characterized by exceptional religiosity. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Please stay tuned for Poland Daily Weather, Poland Daily Business, and some of our other programs. But for me, it's have a great night.